Chosen ones. Let me ask you something straight from the soul. Have you ever wondered why your life seems to be marked by battles so intense, so unthinkable, that no one else around you could even begin to understand them? People talk about the phrase chosen ones as if it were a myth, a legend, something told in hushed stories. But what if I told you the truth is far more serious? Chosen ones are not born. They are made. They are forged through fire, pressure, and a series of tests that most people will never even recognize, let alone survive. These are not battles of flesh and blood, not something you can measure with tools or capture with your eyes. No, these are spiritual, mental, and emotional trials, by far the hardest challenges a soul could ever face. And here's the part that shakes you. Not everyone gets the same test. Life has levels, and the deeper you are called, the more intense your battles become. While others walk paths of comfort, the chosen are dragged into wars they never volunteered for. Why? Because their spirit carries a mission too great to ignore. This inner calling, this unshakable pull, doesn't give you an option. It demands that you walk through the fire. It is not glamorous. It is not easy. It pushes you to the edge of yourself, forcing you to question everything you thought you were. Yet if you can endure it, you will emerge, transformed, stronger, wiser, and forever changed. Before we go deeper, let me pause and speak from my heart. Thank you to every single one of you who has supported this channel through Super Thanks. Whether you've given or not, your very presence, your comments, your time, each one is a gift I don't take lightly. You are helping spread a message that the world desperately needs. And if this message resonates with you right now, I want you to type 777 inches the comments. That number is your confirmation, your divine agreement, that you are ready to see why only you face these unthinkable battles and why victory is already written into your story. So, lean in. Chosen one, what you're about to hear is not for the faint of heart. It's for those who already feel the fire, who know deep down that they have been marked for more. The question is, are you ready to uncover the 8 unthinkable spiritual battles that prove you are chosen? Let us begin. God's chosen ones. Why only you face these 8 unthinkable spiritual battles? The first test does not come wrapped in fire or thunder. It comes quietly, like a storm forming in the depth of your own soul. It begins when you are stripped of every mask, when the world tears away the titles you wear like fragile crowns, your career, your possessions, even the validation of those who once clapped for you, and you are forced to confront the raw truth of who you really are. Is it not unsettling to realize how much time humanity spends constructing false architecture around their lives, as if fragile scaffolding could stand forever? Yet when God commands the scaffolding to fall, when the mirrors shatter and the walls collapse, what is left standing? For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16-7. Suddenly, the abyss opens before you, and the reflection you see is not the one the world celebrates. It is the self heaven always knew. And in that revelation, you begin to understand why every false identity you once clung to feels so hollow, because God has always wanted to reveal the eternal structure hidden beneath the ruins. Why does this first test terrify so many? Because it is not simply a psychological game, it is an existential earthquake. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that no longer flatters you with light, but exposes the shadows clinging to your soul. Who are you when the applause is gone? Who are you when every possession burns like straw before eternal fire? Jesus declared. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Mark 8:36. This is not a gentle inquiry, but a blade that cuts illusions apart. And yet, only the chosen ones dare to stand in that unbearable silence without running. For in that silence, one realizes that identity is not built on temporary applause, but on eternal resonance, vibrating at the frequency of heaven's call. History itself whispers the weight of this trial. Vincent van Gogh, the tormented artist whose canvases bled color from his broken spirit, once wrote in a letter that he longed to see with eyes not clouded by falsehood. Do you see the connection? His paintings, though misunderstood in his lifetime, they were born from that raw encounter with self, the same confrontation the chosen must endure when masks are torn. Can you endure being misunderstood while standing naked before your own soul? Or will you, like so many, run back into the comfortable grave of illusions? Van Gogh's legacy reminds us that the vision born in solitude often becomes the masterpiece generations later, honor proof that enduring the abyss produces fruit beyond the span of one's own life. This test echoes like the opening bars of Mozart's Requiem, where notes descend into haunting dissonance before rising again in transcendent harmony. That music captures the very essence of the abyss, dark, almost unbearable, and yet, within the depth, the promise of glory resounds. Deep calls, too deep in the roar of your waterfalls, all your waves and breakers have swept over me. Psalm 42:7. The abyss is not there to destroy you, but to call forth the voice hidden under layers of noise. It is a rehearsal space for eternity, where the chosen must learn to hear divine harmony amid chaos. Just as an orchestra tunes its instruments in dissonance before the great symphony begins, think about the oak tree battered by centuries of storms. Beneath the bark lies a core that no tempest can uproot, because its roots grip deep rivers underground. This is what the first test demands, to find the hidden river beneath the soil of your being. When everything external collapses, will your soul still be nourished? A simple woman named Marisa, a nurse from Buenos Aires, once told her patients during a blackout in the hospital, "When the lights fail, I carry light inside." That is the quiet defiance of one who has faced the abyss and found an inner flame. Just as the oak tree does not beg the sky for less storm but grows roots deeper with each tempest, so too must the chosen embrace the storm as training for eternal strength. Yet the test always divides. Just as Cain could not bear the weight of God's gaze upon his offering and instead chose jealousy and murder, so too do many collapse under the truth of who they are. His refusal to confront the abyss led to blood on the ground and a curse on his lineage. The chosen, however, take the harder path. They stand firm, trembling yet unbroken, and like Jacob wrestling with the angel, they refuse to let go until they receive a blessing. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Genesis 32:26. Every scar from that wrestling becomes proof of authenticity, a sacred mark that you have touched eternity and survived. And though limping like Jacob, the chosen walk away carrying a new name, forged in the furnace of divine truth. Science agrees. Physicists speak of resonance, the frequency at which matter vibrates until glass shatters or bridges collapse. The soul, too, has a resonance, and when struck by divine truth, illusion fracture like brittle glass. In psychology, this is called identity dissonance, the unbearable clash between who you pretend to be and who you really are. Will you run from the sound? Or will you align yourself with heaven's frequency? Just as architects test the foundation of a building by applying pressure until weak points are revealed, God allows pressure so the cracks in your false self will give way, leaving only what is unshakable. The world has always had its pretenders. Nero, the Roman emperor, cloaked himself in the illusion of divinity, declaring his greatness while Rome burned. His refusal to face truth birthed tyranny and madness until history marked him not as a god but as a monster. How different are the chosen ones, who, instead of feeding illusions with fire, walk willingly into refining flames. For he knows the way that I take when he has tested me. I shall come forth as gold. Job 23:10. Unlike Nero, who crumbled into madness, the chosen emerged purified. In their strength, not in pretending to be gods, but in bowing to the true God who purifies their soul. And perhaps the question that echoes loudest is this: when your identity is stripped bare and the abyss stares back, will you see nothing but darkness? Or will you finally recognize the flicker of God's image within? That is why the hymn, "Be Thou My Vision," sings, "Riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise, Thou mine inheritance, now and always." Could it be that the first test is not punishment but inheritance, a tearing down of false kingdoms so that God himself may dwell within the temple of your being? In that moment, every false throne is toppled, and the architecture of your soul is rebuilt with foundations that no storm can destroy. This is why the chosen endure where others retreat. The illusions of the world are comforting, like the velvet curtains of a theater. But when those curtains burn away, the stage of eternity is revealed. Will you flee back into shadows, or will you stand in the spotlight of God's gaze? The first test is the most brutal because it asks you to die to who you thought you were and rise into who you were always meant to be. And only those destined for greatness embrace this crucifixion of the false self. To run from it is to live in chains. To face it is to step into destiny. Now, rise to the chosen one. Do not shrink back into the ashes of masks and illusions. The abyss is not your grave, but your doorway. Stand before it. Confront it, and walk through it, because beyond it waits the life you were created for. This is not the end, it is the unveiling. And once you pass this first test, the universe itself will know your name, written not on fragile paper, but engraved in heaven's eternal architecture. The second test descends with a weight. Few can endure the test of isolation. We live in an age where noise is constant, where social media, endless work, shallow friendships, and even family chatter form a ceaseless orchestra, drowning out the soul. Yet this trial does not demand you escape merely into physical solitude. It presses deeper, forcing you into the silence of the mind and the emptiness of the heart. Can you withstand that crushing quiet where your own fears whisper, where your desires rise like ghosts, where regrets play like broken records? Many collapse under the weight of this silence because it unmasks what they have avoided for years. Yet, it is here, in the furnace of solitude, that another sound emerges, the steady whisper of eternity. The voice that has been present since your first breath, but buried under the static of the world. Be still, and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Have you ever wondered if perhaps this silence is not emptiness at all, but the very language of heaven? In the same way, an architect studies the silence of empty space before drawing the first line of a cathedral. God designs your soul in quietness before unveiling its grandeur. Why does the silence feel so frightening? Because it strips away distractions until only the truth remains. Jesus himself sought this solitude very early in the morning, while it was still dark. Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place, where he prayed. Mark 1:35. If even the Son of God needed isolation to hear the Father, how much more do you? Yet how many run from it? Terrified of what they might hear, the chosen do not flee, they embrace it, knowing that silence is not a void, but a sanctuary. Just as the night sky, silent and vast, hides galaxies beyond imagination, the silence of the chosen one holds infinite revelations. Could it be that the silence you fear is the very soil where your destiny takes root? And just as a violin string only produces beauty when tension is applied, so too does your soul produce music when silence tightens its grip around you. Nature itself testifies to this truth. Think of the chrysalis, where the caterpillar, hidden in stillness, dissolves into nothingness before re-emerging as a butterfly. Is the darkness of isolation not the same cocoon? What appears to be death is transformation. And yet, while butterflies rise from silence, predators, like the hyena, thrive only in constant noise and chaos. Feeding on distraction, which life will you mirror, the butterfly that transforms in secret, or the scavenger that shrieks in the night? Even rivers have seasons of drought, where the bed lies cracked and barren. But beneath, underground streams keep the flow alive until the rains return. In the same way, your silence may feel dry, but hidden waters still nourish the roots of your being. History, too, tells of those who failed this test. Diocletian, the Roman emperor, drowned himself in endless public games and spectacles, terrified of silence because it revealed his emptiness. His empire of distraction crumbled into dust, leaving nothing but forgotten ruins. The chosen walk another path. They do not fear the desert, they embrace it. Like Elijah, who heard not God in the earthquake or the fire, but in the gentle whisper. 1 Kings 19:12. In solitude, they discover that truth is not loud, it is steady, eternal, unbreakable. To step into silence is to enter the holy architecture of heaven, where every pause becomes a pillar and every breath a foundation stone. And as the theater of distractions collapses around them, the chosen find themselves in the eternal amphitheater where only the voice of God speaks. But then comes the third test, one even harder than silence, the test of letting go. Humanity clings with clenched fists to grudges that corrode like acid, to expectations that never arrive, to disappointments that drag behind like chains. How long can you carry the dead weight of the past before it suffocates your future? Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Isaiah 43-18, 1:9. This is not a command to erase memory, but an invitation to release the grip that binds you to graves. For only the free hands of the chosen can receive new gifts. And when you finally release, you discover that freedom was never about what left you, it was always about what waited to come. Letting go is not weakness, it is holy strength. Jesus taught this when he said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me." Luke 9:23. Daily, that word shatters illusions. Letting go is not a single act. It is a rhythm, like the breath of the soul. A repeated surrender. One moment, you release. The next moment, life tempts you to cling again. but each act of release breaks another chain, until the sound of your freedom shakes even the unseen world. Have you ever felt the weight leave your shoulders in one moment of surrender? Like a bird suddenly freed from a cage, each release is a resurrection rehearsal, teaching your spirit to rise again and again. Nature preaches. The mighty snake sheds its skin, leaving behind what no longer fits. The river does not hoard its waters but lets them flow, trusting that new rain will come. Can your spirit do the same, or will you? Like King Saul, who clung to his throne even after God's favor departed, choose to clutch what is dying until it drags you into ruin. His refusal to let go led to madness, jealousy, and a violent end. The chosen refuse that path. They open their hands, even trembling, knowing that release is the doorway to resurrection, and like the autumn trees that let go of their leaves, trusting spring will return. Chosen ones trust that what falls is never the end, only preparation for new life. Science itself affirms this truth. In physics, release is the moment. Potential energy transforms into kinetic energy motion, born from letting go. In psychology, it is the shedding of attachment that heals trauma. Even architects know that to build a new cathedral, old stones must sometimes be torn down. Are you willing to let the old crumble so the divine blueprint of your life can finally rise? The universe operates on cycles of release. Stars explode, scattering elements that form new worlds. If creation itself lives by letting go, why would your destiny be any different? And here lies the piercing question: what are you still clinging to? An identity long expired, a bitterness poisoning your blood, a dream God Himself has already replaced with something greater. Letting go feels like death, yet it is the prelude to freedom, just as Christ released His very life on the cross, whispering, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Luke 23:46. So too must the chosen commit all that they are into the hands of God. Only then does resurrection come. Each release is not a loss but a coronation, crowning you with strength forged in surrender. So rise. Chosen one, do not cower in noise. Do not sink in clinging chains. Enter the silence. Let go of the past, and step into the freedom that belongs only to those who endure the second and third tests. You are not breaking, you are being rebuilt. You are not losing, you are being liberated. Stand up now, for heaven itself waits for your courage. And remember, those who endure silence and surrender shall not only survive but reign. After the first 3 tests, you may think the hardest part is over. You have faced the abyss of identity, endured the silence of isolation, and released the chains of the past through letting go. Transformation has already begun to stir in your soul. Yet the truth that shakes even the strongest is this: the path of the chosen does not grow easier with each step. It becomes heavier, more demanding, as if the weight of heaven itself presses on your shoulders. Does this frighten you, or does it ignite something inside you? The road narrows, the battles intensify, and what once felt like fire now feels like a furnace, designed to refine gold until it blazes with a purity the world cannot comprehend. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ. 1 Peter 4:12, 1:3. And yet, isn't it true that only when gold passes through unrelenting fire does it gain brilliance beyond imagination? the chosen discover that suffering is not their end, but their transformation into vessels that carry eternity itself. Why is the journey harder after transformation begins? Because new strength demands new battles. The enemy does not waste ammunition on those already defeated. He hurls his heaviest weapons against those who dare to rise. Have you noticed that the higher you climb, the thinner the air becomes, and the fewer companions can walk beside you? Mountains are not scaled in comfort, but in agony, with lungs burning, muscles trembling, and vision blurred by mist. And yet, each painful step is an ascent into destiny. Just as Moses ascended Sinai alone, wrapped in smoke and thunder, until he received the law, Exodus 19:20. So too must you climb into storms that others cannot endure. Can you accept that the difficulty is not punishment, but the signature of calling? For what is sacred has always demanded sacrifice, and what is eternal is never granted to those who demand ease. Science points to this truth. In physics, pressure is not the enemy of diamonds, it is their birthplace. Without unimaginable force, carbon remains common, dull, lifeless. Only under crushing intensity does it sparkle with brilliance. Psychology calls this post-traumatic growth the paradox, where trials produce not collapse, but resilience. And in architecture, the tallest cathedrals require the deepest foundations, invisible beneath the earth, unseen yet bearing the weight of eternity. Could it be that your struggles are not signs of failure, but proof that heaven is constructing something colossal within you? For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. 2 Corinthians 4:17. And even in acoustics, resonance only emerges when the right frequency is struck. Your trials are heaven's frequency, aligning your soul with divine vibration. Without them, you would remain silent stone. With them, you become a living instrument of God's glory. History gives voice to this pattern. Joan of Arc, a peasant girl no one expected to matter, began to hear God's call at 17. The moment she stepped into obedience, her battles did not lessen, they multiplied, mocked, betrayed, and finally burned at the stake. Her trial was not easy, but fire. Yet, centuries later, her name still burns brighter than her enemies who tried to silence her. Does her story not prove that transformation attracts persecution, and that the chosen cannot escape suffering, but instead transfigure it into eternal legacy? Even Shakespeare echoed this truth in Henry V, where he wrote, "The greater man, the mightier is the test." Every era confirms the same principle. Greatness cannot be forged without fire. Nature also reveals the same law. The eagle, once content with the nest, must one day face the violent wind. It is not gentle breezes but fierce storms that teach it to soar above the clouds. The olive tree, beaten and crushed, produces the oil that anoints kings. And even volcanoes violent, terrifying, create the most fertile soil from which future harvests grow. Which image describes your current struggle? Is it possible that the harder your journey becomes, the more certain it is that something sacred is being birthed through your pain? For even the ocean, when lashed by storms, churns its deepest treasures to the surface: pearls, corals, mysteries hidden in silence. Could it be that the storm you fear is the very storm unlocking your hidden wealth? And the warning is clear from those who failed this fourth test. Pharaoh of Egypt, though he witnessed plagues and miracles, hardened his heart again and again. Each confrontation with truth only made his rebellion fiercer, until the waters swallowed both him and his army. Exodus 14:28. His downfall was not in the beginning, but in his refusal to endure transformation when it grew harder. Will you repeat his fate? Or will you, like Paul, who declared, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." 2 Timothy 4:7. Press forward until the crown is placed on your head. Remember, even the strongest walls of Jericho did not fall at the first trumpet, but after 7 relentless days of persistence. The chosen know that endurance is not optional. It is the very breath of victory. The ordinary testify. Anna, a seamstress from Lisbon, once said during years of poverty, "Every new burden felt like the world wanted me to collapse. But with each burden, my hands became steadier, my work sharper, my prayers louder." She stitched clothing by candlelight, yet believed. Every needle she pressed through fabric was training her soul for endurance. Her story, though never written in history books, is carved into heaven's record as proof that hardship refines not just kings and prophets, but the unnoticed faithful. And perhaps that is the secret. It is often the hidden lives, the unseen sacrifices, that shine brightest in eternity. Their quiet perseverance is louder in heaven than the applause of 1,000 crowds. So the message is undeniable. After the first 3 tests, the journey does not soften, it sharpens. The fire burns hotter. The storms rage louder. The battles grow heavier. But this is not the path of the broken, it is the path of the chosen. If the road were easy, it would not be yours. Rise now, chosen one. Do not shrink back when the trial intensifies. For every crushing weight is building a cathedral within your soul. Stand tall, because the harder it gets, the clearer the evidence that you are marked for glory. And know this, the heavens themselves are watching, waiting, and preparing to crown you, not because you avoided the fire, but because you endured it. The 4th test is one that has shattered even the strongest of prophets, saints, and visionaries, the dreaded dark night of the soul. This is not a gentle season of doubt. It is a furnace that strips every illusion, a storm that overturns everything you thought you knew, everything you believed to be unshakable. It feels as though the very universe is interrogating you. How much darkness can you endure before you lose your light? When the night descends, the familiar dissolves, relationships fracture, career paths vanish. The meaning you once clung to crumbles like sand in your hands. You are left standing alone, not with answers, but with piercing questions. Why is this happening? What did I do to deserve this collapse? And most haunting of all, will I ever emerge from this abyss alive? Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Psalm 23:4. But can you still believe this verse when the shadow grows so thick you cannot even feel God's nearness? In those moments, every step feels like walking on shattered glass. Yet each wound becomes evidence that you are still alive, still moving, still chosen. The weight of this test lies not in what is lost, but in what is revealed. The dark night of the soul is not punishment, it is purification. It is the hand of heaven stripping away every false attachment, every borrowed identity, every hollow confidence, until only your truest essence remains. Job experienced this when everything was stripped from him: family, wealth, health. Yet he declared, "Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him." Job 13:15. Could it be that what feels like destruction is actually refinement? The furnace that consumes the impure is the same furnace that reveals the purest gold. And yet, how many collapse before the gold is revealed, mistaking purification for abandonment? This test asks not simply whether you will survive, but whether you will allow yourself to be reborn into something unbreakable. To endure it is to discover that your identity rests not on what you possess, but on who God has always said you are. The greatest minds within faith have spoken of this shadow. The Spanish mystic Saint John of the Cross wrote in his 16th century poem, "Dark Night of the Soul." "O guiding night, O night is more lovely than dawn." He understood that this darkness is paradoxical. It is both agony and invitation, despair and doorway, and music, too, has tried to capture its weight. Listen to Beethoven's symphony, No. 7 inches, a major, where the allegretto moves like a funeral procession, haunting, heavy, yet strangely triumphant. Does it not mirror the rhythm of this trial sorrow intertwined with hidden glory? Could it be that even in the silence of heaven, there is a song unfolding that you cannot yet hear, and if heaven is still singing, might your tears be the hidden notes of that melody, adding resonance to a harmony only eternity can complete? But history also warns of those who failed this test. Pharaoh of Egypt, though he witnessed plagues and miracles, hardened his heart again and again. Each confrontation with truth only made his rebellion fiercer until the waters swallowed both him and his army. Exodus 14:28. His downfall was not in the beginning, but in his refusal to endure transformation when it grew harder. Will you repeat his fate? Or will you, like Paul, who declared, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." 2 Corinthians 4:8-9. Press forward until the crown is placed on your head. Pharaoh's tragedy whispers to us that resistance to change births ruin, while surrender to God's hand births legacy. Every soul at this crossroad must choose destruction by pride or elevation through surrender. The chosen ones know the secret. The darkness is temporary. They refuse to give in when the night whispers lie. They keep moving forward, one trembling step at a time. Even when the road disappears, they trust that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Even when the tunnel feels endless, they remember that Jesus himself cried out on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Matthew 27-46. If the Son endured the silence of heaven and yet rose again, can you not endure your own midnight knowing dawn is inevitable? The chosen anchor themselves in this truth. Silence does not mean absence. Pain does not mean defeat. And night does not mean the end of the story. They walk as those who know the sun is already preparing to rise, even if their eyes are still bound by the dark. So rise. Chosen one, do not panic when everything falls apart. Do not clutch the shards of a life that is crumbling, let them fall, for they were never meant to save you. Trust that what is meant to stay will remain, and what is meant to go will vanish into dust. The dark night of the soul is not your grave, it is your gateway. Stand in it, walk through it, endure it, for beyond it waits a resurrection brighter than any dawn you have ever known. And when you step into that dawn, your scars will not be marks of shame, but proof of victory. And your voice will echo with the authority of one who has passed through fire and yet stands unburned. The fifth test is one of the most grueling trials a chosen soul will ever face, the test of faith. Not merely faith in a religious sense, but faith in yourself, in the God who designed you, in the universe that seems chaotic yet still moves to a hidden rhythm. After the dark night of the soul, this trial emerges like a chasm before your feet, demanding that you step forward even when you cannot see the ground beneath you. Faith is believing not in the absence of pain, but in the presence of purpose within the pain. Faith is that mysterious fire that whispers, "Keep going," when every voice around you screams to quit. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Hebrews 11:1. But can you cling to this assurance when everything around you collapses into ruins? In those moments, faith is not a concept. It becomes your breath, your heartbeat, the invisible thread keeping you from falling into despair. Faith is never blind. It is not denial, nor is it naive optimism. Faith does not say, "I am not hurting." Faith says, "I am hurting, yet I still believe this suffering has meaning." It is the posture of Job, sitting in ashes, scraping his sores, yet refusing to curse God. It is the prayer of Habakkuk, who cried, "Though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails, and the fields produce no food, yet I will rejoice in the Lord." Habakkuk 3:17, 1:8. Faith faces the storm head-on, feels every raindrop, and still trusts there is a rainbow beyond the thunder. Is your faith that strong? Can you believe in divine design when you see only chaos? Or trust in a plan when all you feel is abandonment? Faith at this level becomes defiance. It is rebellion against despair, an act of courage that silences fear's loudest scream. This is perhaps one of the hardest tests because it requires you to believe in what cannot be proven, to trust in what cannot be touched, to lean on what cannot be measured. When you are deep in the dark night, faith becomes your only lifeline. And here lies the paradox. The more the night presses in, the more luminous your faith becomes. Like stars that only reveal their brilliance against a blackened sky, true faith only shines brightest in utter darkness. For we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5-7. Could it be that the unseen road ahead is actually safer than the illusions behind you? Faith at this depth is not passive, it is active resilience. The inner resolve that transforms weakness into strength. Even when answers never come, faith itself becomes the answer, carrying you forward when logic fails. Nature preaches this lesson. The salmon swims upstream against violent currents, guided by an instinct it cannot explain, trusting there is a spawning ground ahead, though it has never seen it. The sunflower turns its face daily toward the unseen movement of the sun, even on cloudy days when the light is hidden, and the desert cactus holds unseen water deep within, surviving seasons of drought others could never endure. Are these not metaphors for faith, that even when sight fails, an inner compass still directs you to life? Faith is the same, an unseen reservoir, an unspoken instinct, a hidden turning of the soul toward a God who sometimes hides, yet never abandons. The chosen must learn to trust this inner compass, even when storms scream otherwise. For it is heaven's map buried in the human spirit. History bears witness too. Thomas Edison, the relentless inventor, endured 1,000 failed attempts before creating the light bulb. When asked about his failures, he said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10." 0,000 ways that won't work. His persistence is a mirror of spiritual faith, holding on when results are invisible. But Scripture gives us a sharper picture. Abraham, called to leave his homeland, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Hebrews 11:8. He trusted an unseen God enough to walk into unknown lands. Can you step forward like him, even when every step feels like falling into shadow? Edison's invention eventually lit the world, but Abraham's faith lit eternity, becoming the foundation of nations. Both stories prove that unseen trust births visible transformation, but only when endurance refuses to surrender. Yet we must not ignore the danger of failing this test. King Ahaz of Judah, though given promises of divine protection, placed his faith in foreign alliances instead of God. His fear led him to sacrifice his own son in fire, and his throne became a legacy of ruin. 2 Kings 16:3-5. His story warns us, misdirected faith is as destructive as faithlessness itself. Will you let fear drive you into compromises that destroy your destiny? Or will you hold to faith even when compromise seems easier? The wrong foundation of trust always leads to collapse, while true faith, even when small, becomes a rock nothing can shatter. Faith must be guarded as sacred, for once it shifts to idols, it becomes a snare that chains generations. And here lies the real weight of this test. Faith is tested not once, but over and over again. Each wave of trial tempts you to let go, to surrender not to God, but to despair. How strong is your faith when the darkness stretches longer than you thought possible? Will you give up when prayers seem unanswered? Or will you keep pressing, knowing that heaven is already moving in ways you cannot see? Jesus told his disciples, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move." Matthew 17:20. Could it be that even the smallest ember of faith in you carries mountain-moving power? Even trembling faith is still faith, and God counts the trembling as victory. For in his kingdom, the size of faith matters less than its endurance. At some point, when you have walked long enough through the shadow, you reach a precipice. Everything in you screams to turn back, yet something divine whispers, "Jump, and I will catch you." This is the cliff of surrender, the moment where sight ends and faith begins. To cross it is terrifying, but on the other side lies destiny. Faith is not proven when you are comfortable, it is proven when comfort is stripped away and you still cling to hope. And when you endure, you emerge like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the furnace, untouched by flame, carrying the fragrance of deliverance. In that moment, you realize faith was never about the outcome. It was about trusting the one who controls the outcome. Faith becomes freedom, for when you leap into the unseen, you discover God has always been beneath you, holding you. So rise, chosen one, strengthen your grip. The darkness is not forever. Hold to your faith even if it trembles. For trembling faith still counts as faith. Do not let go. For the unseen is more real than the visible, and the eternal is more enduring than the temporary. Stand firm in this fifth test, for beyond it lies the glory that no night can extinguish. And when you pass through, your story will become a torch for others wandering in their own nights. Your endurance will echo louder than sermons, and your scars will shine brighter than crowns. The sixth test is perhaps the most paradoxical of all. the test of surrender. If you have reached this stage, it means you have already proven your strength, resilience, and your ability to endure storms that would have broken countless others. You have survived the abyss of identity, the silence of isolation, the release of letting go, the night of despair, and the test of faith. But now comes the trial that strikes deeper than strength: surrender. This is not about clenching your fists and proving your power. It is about opening your hands and releasing control. It is about trusting a design that stretches beyond your understanding, about yielding to forces greater than your will. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. Proverbs 3:5-6. Yet, how difficult is it to bow when every part of you wants to resist and still? Surrender is the doorway where human will meets divine orchestration, where your story becomes part of an eternal script far larger than yourself. Humans cling to control like architects desperate to draw every line of the blueprint. We plan, we strategize, we attempt to script every chapter of our lives, our careers, our relationships, our futures, believing we are the authors of our own destinies. But then life, with its mysterious hand, erases our lines and redraws the blueprint with strokes we never intended. Sometimes it leads us into valleys of pain, other times into peaks of joy, often into paths cloaked in mystery. Will you fight against the architect of eternity? Or will you surrender and allow the heavenly design to unfold? Jesus Himself revealed this when, in Gethsemane, He prayed, "Not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22:42. If even the Son released His will, how much more must we? The truth is, surrender means acknowledging that your drafts are temporary sketches, while God's blueprint is the foundation that will stand forever. Surrender is not weakness, it is alignment. It does not mean giving up dreams. It means releasing the illusion that you must force them into being. It is like water flowing around stone, unyielding in purpose, yet flexible in path. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Psalm 37:7. Have you ever noticed that the most powerful symphonies include moments of silence, pauses that give the music weight? In the same way, surrender is the pause in the battle, the quiet breath that gives strength to rise again. It is the art of ceasing resistance so that divine resonance can flow through you. Could it be that your greatest victories will come not by grasping harder, but by yielding deeper? To surrender is to learn that silence can carry more power than shouting, and stillness can hold more weight than frantic striving. Science also whispers this truth. In physics, resistance creates friction, heat, and eventual breakdown. But resonance, when two frequencies align, creates power, amplification, and harmony. In psychology, surrender is linked to resilience. The paradox that those who release control cope better than those who cling. And in architecture, cathedrals are designed with flying buttresses, structures that surrender outward pressure so the building can rise higher than stone should allow. Your surrender is the spiritual buttress that allows your soul to reach heights control could never achieve. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that He may lift you up in due time. 1 Peter 5-6. Could it be that heaven uses surrender not to lower you, but to lift you to places your strength could never take you? The science of faith is simple yet profound. Release multiplies power, while control diminishes it. History has shown us both the beauty of surrender and the tragedy of control. Emperor Napoleon, consumed by his obsession to control Europe, stretched his armies into the frozen wastes of Russia. His refusal to yield to wisdom led to collapse, loss, and exile. Contrast this with Mary, a young woman in Nazareth, who, though terrified by the angel's message, answered, "I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled." Luke 1:38. Her surrender birthed salvation into the world. Do you see how one heart lost everything by control, while another changed history by surrender? Which story are you writing about in your life right now? Napoleon's empire of control crumbled into dust, while Mary's moment of surrender became eternal legacy. This test forces you to ask, are you building an empire that will collapse, or yielding to a kingdom that will never end? The ordinary testified to this truth. Samuel, a fisherman from a small coastal village in Ghana, once said during a storm at sea, "When the nets broke and I could not save the catch, I felt rage. But when I let the sea take it and stopped fighting, the boat steadied, and I realized survival mattered more than fish." His words hold wisdom for the chosen. Surrender is not losing, it is preserving the essence of life, the core of destiny. How many of us cling to broken nets, risking the boat, when God is calling us simply to let go and trust? Sometimes it takes the wisdom of an ordinary life to reveal the extraordinary truth that peace begins where resistance ends. And perhaps it is in these hidden testimonies that surrender shines most brightly, reminding us that heaven often speaks through humble voices. This is why surrender is the hardest test. It requires courage not to act, but to yield, not to fight, but to trust. You will face moments where every instinct tells you to grasp tighter, to force outcomes, to manipulate your way into safety. But surrender whispers, "Let go." It asks you, will you still believe when your plans collapse? Will you still trust when your blueprint is erased? Will you allow yourself to fall into God's hands, trusting He will catch you? Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. 1 Peter 5-7. And if you can endure this release, you will discover that surrender is not the end of your fight, it is the crown of it. The moment where your faith graduates into freedom. So rise. Chosen one. Stop fighting shadows. Lay down the illusion of control. The universe is not against you. God is weaving threads you cannot yet see. Your task is not to hold tighter, but to open wider. The sixth test is not meant to break you, but to liberate you. Surrender now, and you will discover strength greater than control, peace greater than understanding, and victory greater than fear. Stand tall in surrender, for it is here that chosen ones discover the power of being carried by God Himself. And when you stand, you will no longer walk under your own weight. You will soar on the wings of divine strength. The current of life does not bend to our will, no matter how fiercely we fight it. The seventh test is learning to stop thrashing against the waters and instead allow yourself to be carried by them. Imagine a river, its current steady and unstoppable. If you fight upstream, your muscles burn, your lungs collapse, and in the end, you move nowhere. But if you surrender, if you let the current carry you, you will be borne effortlessly to where you were always meant to go. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. But here is the real question. Can you dare to stop fighting long enough to trust that the river knows the way better than you? And if you could, Would you finally see that the current was never trying to drown you, it was trying to deliver you? This test demands more than just releasing your plans, it demands releasing yourself. It asks for the surrender of your identity, your ego, even the fragile illusions of who you think you are. It asks you to loosen your grip on desires, attachments, and even dreams you once thought defined you. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. Matthew 16:25. Does this not pierce the heart? Surrender is not an overnight act. It is a process that breaks you and heals you simultaneously. It requires trust not only in God, but in the mysterious unfolding of the greater plan, even when you cannot see it. And yet, how many times do we sabotage our peace by resisting reality, clinging to what God has already called us to release? True surrender is like peeling away layers of falsehood until only the eternal core of your spirit remains. Faithful voices throughout history have echoed this truth. Mahatma Gandhi, a leader who shaped nations without raising a sword, once said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." His words mirror the divine law of surrender, that the self you are terrified to release is the self that must die for the true self to emerge. And the Bible affirms this. For Paul declared, "I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me." Galatians 2:20. Is it not astonishing that what feels like loss is actually transformation? That in surrendering who you think you are, you discover who you were always meant to be. The paradox is that you give up what is fragile to receive what is eternal. And in doing so, you are no longer diminished, you are expanded. This mystery has even been painted into art. In El Greco's masterpiece, The Agony in the Garden, Christ kneels under the weight of sorrow, his hands open to the Father's will. The shadows are heavy, yet the light of heaven breaks through, bathing him in surrender's glow. And centuries later, the hymn, "Take my life and let it be," gave words to the same truth. "Take my will and make it thine, it shall be no longer mine." Could it be that art itself has always been heaven's whisper, that true strength is found not in grasping but in yielding, when brushstroke, poetry, and melody all converge on the same truth? It is because they are echoing the eternal language of God, surrender. Art, like surrender, endures because it points to what cannot be destroyed. Nature itself reveals this same principle. The wind bends the reed but cannot break it, because the reed does not resist, it flows. It yields. It surrenders. The mighty oak, rigid and unbending, often snaps under the storm, while the reed survives. The river, unhurried yet relentless, carves valleys and nourishes fields simply by flowing where gravity calls it. Is surrender not the same? And if creation itself is teaching us, why do we insist on building dams of resistance that only lead to collapse? Cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. Psalm 55:22. Every tree that bends under storm knows something we forget. Surrender is survival. Perhaps this is why creation thrives while we wither, because we resist what we should release. History warns us with examples of those who failed this test. Pharaoh, consumed by his need to control, fought against God's command to release Israel. Each act of resistance led to another plague, until finally, his refusal drowned him in the Red Sea. His downfall is the eternal symbol of what happens when control blinds us. Contrast this with Abraham, who laid Isaac on the altar in surrender to God's command. His willingness to release what he loved most brought forth the greatest covenant. Which path do you mirror, Pharaoh clinging until destruction, or Abraham releasing until blessing overflowed? Every generation is asked this question, and every destiny is determined by the answer. Refusal leads to ruin, surrender opens the gates of glory. Ordinary lives hold the same wisdom. A woman named Clara, a teacher in a small village in Italy, once confessed that her greatest peace came the day she stopped demanding her life to look like everyone else's. After years of heartbreak, she whispered a simple prayer: God, if this is the life you give me, let me live it fully. From that surrender came joy, students who adored her, and a legacy far greater than the marriage and wealth she once clung to. Have you noticed that ordinary people often carry extraordinary lessons of surrender? And could it be that the same peace is waiting for you once you release your demand for control? Clara's surrender shows us that even unseen lives can create unseen ripples that move eternity itself. The test of surrender is not weakness, it is the strength to stop fighting battles you were never meant to fight. It is courage. The courage to trust the unknown when it feels terrifying to release what is familiar. Most people will fail this test because surrender feels like losing. But the chosen know the secret. Surrender is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the moment you finally step into the current of destiny, where your strength ends and God's strength begins. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1-9. And when you pass this test, you realize surrender is not passive. It is the most powerful act of faith you will ever choose. So rise. Chosen one, release the grip that is bleeding your spirit dry. Lay down the illusion that you must carry every outcome on your shoulders. Step into the river. Let the current carry you. And discover that surrender is not drowning, it is learning to float on the waters of grace. The seventh test is not your defeat, it is your doorway. Stand tall in your surrender, for it is here that eternity begins to flow through you. And when you let go, you will discover that you were never carried by the current of chance, but by the hands of God Himself. The eighth and final test is the test of destiny. It is the moment when every trial you have faced, identity, isolation, letting go, darkness, faith, surrender, and flow culminates into a single question: will you step fully into the life God has prepared for you? This is not merely about survival, it is about transformation. It is the hour when heaven weighs your journey and asks if you are ready to wear the crown of purpose. I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Philippians 3:14. But are you ready to press on? Even when the road ahead demands everything you are and everything you have left. For destiny does not wait for hesitation, it calls for absolute courage. And only those who answer become history's voices of eternity. This test is not gentle, it is fierce. Because destiny never comes cheaply. You will feel the weight of opposition increase, as though the world itself conspires to keep you from the threshold. Friends may doubt you. Enemies may rise. Even your own fears may scream louder than ever. But this is where chosen ones rise. It is like standing at the gates of a great city, your promised land, while armies gather to keep you out. Will you cower, or will you enter? Joshua and Caleb stood at such a moment, when others trembled before giants. But they declared, "The Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them." Numbers 14-9. Could it be that your giants are only there to prove the size of your calling? The truth is, giants appear only in front of promised lands. Their presence is not proof of failure, but confirmation of inheritance. Destiny requires not only courage, but vision. Architecture teaches us that the most breathtaking cathedrals took centuries to complete. Foundations dug deep, stones laid one by one, arches stretching toward heaven with precision. Your life is no different. Every test has been a stone, every trial a pillar, every surrender a buttress. Now the question is, will you step inside the cathedral God has built within you, or will you remain outside, admiring its beauty but never inhabiting its glory? Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Psalm 127:1. Do you realize that every fracture of your past was preparation for the structure you now embody? A cathedral is not only seen, it is entered, and destiny is not only dreamed, it is lived. Music whispers this truth. In Handel's Messiah, the chorus erupts, and he shall reign forever and ever. The grandeur builds, layer upon layer, until it feels as if heaven itself is descending into the room. That crescendo is what the final test feels like, the moment when all silence, pain, and waiting converge into a triumphant declaration. Your life becomes the chorus, your faith the melody, and your destiny the unshakable rhythm that carries you forward. Isn't it time you joined that song with your own voice? For the chosen ones, destiny is not background music, it is the anthem they embody, the symphony that their lives conduct into the world. History proves that those who embrace destiny changed the world. Martin Luther King Jr., standing before crowds in Washington, declared, "I have a dream," though he knew the cost could be his very life. His destiny was not comfort, but sacrifice. And yet his surrender carved pathways of freedom for generations. Scripture, too, reminds us of Esther, who risked her life before the king and declared, "If I perish, I perish." Esther 4:16. Her destiny did not wait for safety. It demanded courage. Will you choose like Esther, stepping into the unknown to save many? Or will you shrink back and let fear silence your purpose? Every destiny demands a price, but the price you pay unlocks a freedom far greater than yourself. Ordinary lives testify to this final threshold. A young man named Daniel, a baker in Nairobi, once told his congregation, "I realized destiny is not what I dreamt of, it is what God dreamt of for me." After losing his business in a fire, he chose not to give up, but to start again, feeding children in his neighborhood with what little he had. Years later, his small bakery became a refuge for the hungry, and his story became proof that destiny is not found in possessions, but in obedience. Could it be that your ordinary steps are already shaping an extraordinary legacy? If a baker's surrendered yes can feed a village, what might your surrendered yes feed in generations to come? This test asks you to surrender fear of the unknown and to walk boldly through the gates of your calling. It will never feel convenient. It will never feel easy. And it will often feel impossible. But destiny is not meant to be convenient. It is meant to be conquered. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 1-9. The final test demands all of you, but it promises more than you can imagine: impact, legacy, and eternal significance. Destiny's gate never opens for the half-hearted. It swings wide only for those who choose courage when fear seems louder. So, Reese, chosen one, this is your hour. Do not shrink back when the gate opens. Do not doubt when the voice of heaven calls. Step forward into the life God has been building within you all along. The 8th test is not the end, it is the beginning of destiny fulfilled. Stand tall, for heaven is waiting for your yes, and the world is waiting for your light. And when you step through, you will realize destiny was not a destination, but the person you became through every test, every fire, and every surrender. The flow of life is not conquered by force, but entered through surrender. The 9th test is learning to stop struggling, to release the frantic need to control, and to allow life God's current to guide you. Surrendering to life does not strip you of power, on the contrary. It aligns you with a power infinitely greater than your own. It plugs you into the intelligence of heaven, the orchestration of the universe, the divine wisdom that knows precisely what you need and exactly when you need it. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. Yet how often do we block that plan by clinging desperately to our own steering wheels? Convinced we know better than the one who designed the road, could it be that the very struggles exhausting you are not punishments, but signs that you are resisting the current that was meant to carry you? To access this greater power, you must first shatter the illusion of control. The chosen ones learn to loosen their grip on every outcome, to let go of the false security of manipulation, and to trust the hand unseen. Jesus taught, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Matthew 6:34. Can you release the crushing weight of tomorrow and live as though today is already secured in God's hand? The paradox is that when you surrender, you actually gain more control, but it is not the control of forcing life into your mold. It is the control of alignment. The harmony that comes when your frequency resonates with the Creator's design. Have you noticed that when you stop wrestling, doors begin to open? And when you stop pushing, paths appear where walls once stood. Nature proclaims this mystery. The butterfly does not rip its cocoon open in haste. It waits. It yields. And at the right time, its wings strengthen enough to fly. The tide does not rage to control the moon. It flows faithfully in rhythm, rising and falling in obedience to an unseen pull. Even the wild geese in migration surrender to the wind's currents, carried thousands of miles by forces greater than their wings. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Does this not teach us that surrender is not idleness, but alignment? If the creatures of the earth thrive by flowing with design, what might happen if you yielded to the divine current instead of exhausting yourself against it? History warns us of the cost of resisting. King Saul, chosen to lead Israel, lost his throne because he refused to surrender his pride and obey God's instruction. His need for control blinded him, leading him to offer unlawful sacrifices and grasp at power that was slipping from his hands. 1 Samuel 15:23. His story became a cautionary tale. Clinging to control is the fastest path to collapse. But contrast this with Noah, who surrendered to God's strange command to build an ark before a drop of rain had fallen. His surrender seemed foolish to men, yet it preserved his destiny and birthed a new covenant. Which legacy will your choices mirror, Saul's ruin or Noah's salvation? The arts whisper the wisdom of surrender. In Shakespeare's The Tempest, Prospero releases his magic, declaring, "I'll break my staff, bury certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than did ever plummet sound, I'll drown my book." His power was not truly complete until he surrendered it. And in Johann Sebastian Bach's chorales, voices weave in and out as if yielding to one another. Yet in that surrender, they form harmonies that shake the soul. Could it be that both literature and music reveal the same hidden law that, in yielding, the true beauty of destiny unfolds? Ordinary lives testify too. A woman named Ayaka, a florist in Kyoto, once told her congregation, "The day I stopped demanding that every flower bloom exactly as I wanted was the day my shop began to flourish." She had lost everything in a fire, but in her surrender she discovered that life, like a garden, thrives not under tight control, but under trust in the season. Her shop became not only a place of beauty, but a sanctuary where grieving families came to find comfort. Her life whispered a truth often overlooked. Surrender does not end your story, it makes it bloom. This is why surrender to the flow of life is the dividing line between the chosen and the rest. Anyone can grasp, cling, and resist, but few dare to release. This test demands faith, not in outcomes, but in the one who writes them. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. Psalm 23, Achat Shalosh. Can you trust those quiet waters even when storms surround you? Can you step into the unknown, believing the path is already prepared even if your eyes cannot yet see it? So rise. Chosen one, let go of the wheel that was never yours to control. Stop exhausting your spirit against the current. Yield to the flow of life. For it is not chaos, but divine choreography, carrying you exactly where you are meant to be. The ninth test is not a weakness. It is the secret strength of alignment. Step into the mystery. Trust the unseen, and watch as destiny unfolds around you like a river that was always flowing, waiting only for your surrender. The test of surrender is not the end. It is only the threshold of something far greater. And here begins one of the final, most sacred trials, the test of awakening. Only those who can truly let go, who can surrender to the flow of life and release their desperate grip on illusion, will be carried into this revelation. For the chosen ones who endure, life unveils itself as more magnificent than anything they could have planned or forced. If you have come this far, if you have survived the furnace of surrender, you stand among the few who have walked through fire without being consumed. Yet one final test remains, and it is the most profound of all, the unveiling of truth itself. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Are you ready to face freedom, even if it dismantles everything you thought you knew? The test of awakening is not about endurance of pain, but revelation of vision. It is the moment when the veil is lifted, when the invisible hand guiding you is finally revealed, and when the pieces of your trials converge into a picture of divine purpose. This test does not ask, "What can you do?" but "What can you see?" The chosen discover that awakening is like stepping out of a cave into sunlight after years of shadows. The shock is blinding, the brilliance overwhelming, but the truth undeniable. Paul described this unveiling when he wrote, "For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, then we shall see face to face." 1 Corinthians 13:12. How will you respond when the mirror shatters and the raw image of destiny stands before you? Will you tremble, or will you rise to embrace it? Science itself gives language to this mystery. In psychology, there is what scholars call a paradigm shift, the sudden restructuring of thought when an old framework collapses. giving way to a higher reality. In physics, it is the quantum leap, when an electron jumps to a higher orbit, unseen yet irreversible. In architecture, it is the keystone that holds the arch together, invisible yet indispensable. The test of awakening is this leap, this keystone, this collapse of false frameworks so that truth can rise. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. Could it be that the trials you endured were not chaos, but carefully engineered frequencies, breaking the resonance of illusion so that your soul could vibrate in harmony with heaven? The arts have whispered of such an awakening. In Dante's Divine Comedy, the poet emerges from the darkness of hell and the trials of purgatory only to behold the radiant vision of paradise. The entire journey was not punishment but preparation, stripping him of illusions so that truth could blaze before him. And in Beethoven's Ode to Joy, the symphony swells until voices erupt together, proclaiming a unity that transcends suffering. Could it be that your pain, too, has been a hidden overture, and your awakening is the chorus waiting to explode? For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. Romans 8:19. Is it possible that the entire cosmos has been holding its breath for the moment of your unveiling? History, too, testifies. Augustine of Hippo, once a restless seeker, consumed by pleasure and confusion, finally surrendered in a garden when he heard a voice whisper, "Take and read." Opening scripture, his soul awakened, and he became one of the greatest voices of the church. But contrast this with King Herod, who, blinded by pride, refused to awaken to the light brought by Christ. His grip on power led to paranoia and bloodshed, and his name became a symbol of cruelty and fear. Which legacy will be yours? Augustine's transformation or Herod's ruin? The answer lies in how you respond to truth when it pierces your illusions. The ordinary bear witness to awakening. A man named Ramil, a taxi driver in Manila, once said, "I thought I drove just to earn. But one night, after helping a stranger who was lost, I realized maybe my purpose was not to drive people to places, but to drive them to hope." His words, though simple, contain the essence of the final test. Awakening is not about becoming something new, but seeing what you already are. How many of us, like Ramil, are living purposelessly, waiting for the veil to fall so that we see the truth that has been guiding us all along? The chosen are not chosen because they are special, they are chosen because they choose to awaken. They decide to see the truth, even when it shatters their comfort, even when it challenges everything they believe. Awakening is realizing that you are not separate from life, not a victim of circumstance, but life itself expressing itself through a unique form, through a unique journey. Jesus declared, "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit." John 15:5. Can you accept that your trials were not punishments, but pruning, designed to bring forth fruit that remains? The final test is this: to recognize that all struggles, all darkness, and all uncertainty were never meant to destroy you, but to strip away illusion. They were chisels in the hand of the divine sculptor, breaking away stone to reveal the image within. Awakening is not addition, it is unveiling. It is discovering that what you sought was never outside, but always inside, waiting for sight to catch up with truth. And when this moment comes, Your entire being resonates with one cry, "Now I see." Rebbe 4. So, rise. Chosen one, do not fear the light when it pierces your darkness. Do not cling to the veil when it tears away. The test of awakening is not your end, but your unveiling. Step into truth. Embrace your purpose. And shine as one who has finally seen. The world is waiting for you to awaken. And heaven is already celebrating your arrival. The false identities, the shallow masks, the egoic desires, all were meant to be stripped away so you could finally gaze into the deeper reality that has always been beneath it all. And that reality is this: you are here for a reason. Chosen not by accident, but by design. Life itself longed to experience its own reflection through you, and so it placed you in time and space as a unique expression of eternity. Your purpose is not some hidden treasure buried outside yourself. It is already alive in your heartbeat, your breath, your every moment. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1-5. But can you accept that your existence was written long before you doubted it? Can you embrace that purpose is not something to chase, but something you are? The final test asks you to awaken to this truth, to recognize that you are not separate from the universe, but an integral thread woven into its vast tapestry. It is a revelation that shatters illusion. You are not drifting in chaos, but moving in rhythm with a greater design. Jesus declared, "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit." John 15-5. When you awaken to this, everything changes. The frantic need to control melts away because you finally see that life is unfolding with a perfection beyond your calculations. The restless search for purpose fades because you realize your very being is purpose. Your very breath, a prayer. Your very life, a message. Have you noticed how the most profound truths often feel terrifying at first, but once embraced, bring peace deeper than anything the world can give? This awakening is not the conclusion of your journey. It is the beginning of an entirely new one. Passing this test does not mean you retire into stillness. It means you rise into freedom. You are no longer shackled by the limitations of the mind, enslaved by the ego, or silenced by fear. You are liberated to live with meaning, to love without reserve, to create without apology, to explore without the weight of doubt. Paul wrote, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free." Galatians 5:1. But freedom is not given cheaply. Are you willing to let go of every false cage to step into the vastness of who you really are? Science and architecture bear witness to this mystery. In physics, resonance occurs when frequencies align, producing power greater than the sum of their parts. Awakening is resonance, your soul aligning with heaven's vibration, amplifying your life into divine harmony. In architecture, the final stone placed in a cathedral arch, the keystone unlocks the strength of the entire structure. The tests you endured were the stones, but this awakening is the keystone that reveals the meaning of it all. And in psychology, it is the moment of integration, when fractured parts of the self finally unify into one coherent whole. For God gave us a spirit not of fear but of power and love and self-control. 2 Timothy 1-7. Could it be that your trials were never meant to break you, but to bring your inner architecture into alignment with heaven's blueprint? History tells us of those who met this test. Moses, once a fugitive, awakened to his divine calling at a burning bush and realized he was chosen to deliver a nation. That single moment redefined his entire existence. Yet Judas, blinded by greed and fear, refused to awaken to the truth standing before him. His end became a monument of despair. Which path will you walk, the burning bush of revelation or the shadows of betrayal? Awakening demands a choice, and the weight of that choice echoes through eternity. Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. Joshua 24-15. What will you choose when truth finally stares you in the face? The ordinary testify to this unveiling. A seamstress named Elena from Lisbon once said, "The day I stopped calling myself unlucky was the day I saw blessings everywhere." After losing her husband, she surrendered to despair, but slowly. She awakened to the truth that every stitch she sewed, every garment she made, clothed someone in dignity. Her awakening was not dramatic, but it changed everything. She no longer lived as a victim of life, but as a vessel of it. How many of us are living like Elena once did, blind to the fact that life is already flowing through us, waiting only for our eyes to open? The arts whisper the same. In T.S. Eliot's Little Gidding, the poet writes, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." Awakening is this paradox. You arrive at yourself and discover you were home all along. And in the hymn, "Be Thou My Vision," voices rise in unity, declaring, "Riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise. Thou mine inheritance, now and always." Could it be that awakening is not about becoming something new, but finally seeing that you have always carried heaven within? This final test is the gift reserved for the chosen, the unveiling of what has always been true. All struggles, all trials, all nights of despair were chisels in the hand of the master sculptor, stripping away illusions to reveal the eternal form hidden within. Awakening is the moment the statue steps out of the stone, the soul steps out of shadow, and the chosen one finally sees. Jesus promised, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." Matthew 5-8. Will you dare to see what has always been waiting for you? So rise, chosen one. The veil is torn, the illusions broken, the truth revealed. This is not the end of your journey, it is the unveiling of your eternity. Step forward into freedom, into joy, into divine sight. The final test is not meant to diminish you, it is meant to crown you. Stand tall, for heaven has been waiting for this moment, the hour you awaken and declare with your life that you have seen, and you will never be blind again. Chosen ones, after walking through the weight of these 8 unthinkable spiritual battles, you now understand why your life has never looked ordinary. Every battle was not random, it was refinement. Each fire, each silence, each surrender, and each awakening was heaven's way of shaping you into a vessel strong enough to carry divine purpose. You were not chosen because the road would be easy, but because God knew you could endure what others could not. These trials were never designed to break you, they were meant to reveal you. And now, standing on the other side of the furnace, you are proof that darkness cannot defeat those who belong to the light. If this message has spoken to your soul, I invite you to take a moment to engage with this channel. Like this video, share it with someone you know is walking through their own battles, and comment below the number 777 as a declaration that you are aligning with divine victory. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel so you never miss the guidance, revelation, and encouragement meant to sustain you on your journey. Every small action you take here helps us spread light further into a world desperate for truth. I also want to pause and give a heartfelt thank you to those of you who have supported through Super Thanks. Your generosity is deeply appreciated. And to those who simply watch, listen, and stand with us in spirit, know this: you are no less valued. Every single one of you is part of this chosen community, and your presence here is a blessing in itself. So, as you leave today, may you walk with renewed courage. May you carry the wisdom of your battles as a testimony that nothing can silence the chosen. May God's peace surround you, His favor go before you, and His hand lifts you higher than fear ever tried to pull you down. Be blessed, chosen one. Your battles have prepared you. Your purpose awaits you, and your victory is already written.